Hello and welcome back once again to Movie Reviews. So hopefully, I'm trying to shoot this one directly after the last one, but since my batteries are dying, hopefully I can make it through it. I went and saw Exodus, Gods and Kings, I believe was the subtitle. So, what did I think of this movie? I think it had a lot of potential to be really good, but overall ended up being pretty damn boring. For those of you who don't know, Exodus is the story of Moses from the Bible. And honestly, I saw what they were going for with this one and the potential that it had. But this is probably one of the most boring, overly drawn out, fast-paced at the same time, but really slow versions of the story I've seen. You could always go watch the Ten Commandments. That one's a lot better. Also very long movie, but watchable. Prince of Egypt, the animated version, I vaguely remember that one being kind of good. This one, it starts out strong, and then it starts to slow down a little bit, then they jump ahead a lot, and then they slow down again, but the parts they slow back down to tell are kind of non-important. They could have skipped over these parts and had a lot more depth into the backstory, I guess. I know it's from the Bible and there's only so much they can work with, but it's Hollywood, improvise a little bit. That's what you do with every other movie. So then it's just by the end of it, I was actually starting to doze off, and even the guy in front of me was like, Jesus, what time is it? Is this thing over yet? How much longer does this have? So it was getting kind of boring for everyone, I think. No one was really saying much in the theater. So it starts out with adult Ramses and Moses and the Pharaoh, which I guess would have been Ramses the First, if I remember the Egyptian lineage properly. So they're grown-ups, and they're both generals under the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh has a fortune teller, a mystic or whatever, that's reading entrails to tell him if he'll win a war or not. And the mystic says it's unclear, but what is clear is that a leader will be saved, and from his savior shall come a leader. So, of course, they're like, oh, this is all hogwash or whatever, until they're on the battlefield, and Ramses falls, and Moses saves him. So, of course, Ramses is then kind of like, oh, you're going to become the leader over me, the prophecy, blah, blah, blah. And Moses is like, I don't believe in prophecy, you don't believe in prophecy, so why are you letting it bother you? Then it just kind of skips ahead to after the Pharaoh dies. Well, actually, before that, it went to Moses visiting this slave encampment to see what the conditions were, and reports back to the Pharaoh, and then kind of jumps ahead to where the Pharaoh dies and Ramses takes the throne. Then it just kind of does nothing for a while. It's like reviewing all this stuff, and it's just not necessary. They could have skipped ahead again right here and saved a lot of time, because this movie was over, I think it was just over 2 hours, like 2 hours and 10 minutes or something like that. Didn't need to be. So Ramses gets the news of what was discovered at the camp that Moses didn't tell anyone, and that was that Moses was Hebrew born. So he questions Moses about it. Moses goes, I heard the story, I don't believe it. Why are you, you shouldn't believe it either. We were raised as brothers. Let's just leave it at that. But Ramses can't let it rest, finds out the truth that he was Hebrew born. But since he knew the story and didn't tell anyone and essentially lied about it, they banished him. Even though Ramses' mother wanted him executed, he was just exiled. So then he goes off into the woods, or the desert woods. They live in Egypt, there's no woods. But he goes off into the desert, meets this other Hebrew family. I think they were Hebrews anyway. Then it kind of skips ahead in there again to where he meets this girl when he comes into the village, and then it skips ahead to them being married. And even the guy in front of me is like, wait, so they got married after like 10 minutes of knowing each other? I'm like, And, it occurred to me that they were skipping time, but I don't think he realized that. So then meets God, which I'm not going to go too much into that. Read the Bible if you don't know how it happens. Who was played by a child for some reason. I never quite understood that. Although later in the movie he says that he's taking advice or taking leadership from a messenger, so maybe the child is a messenger of God and not actually God, or, he's playing the voice of God. I didn't really quite fully follow that, but yeah. So God was played by a child. So God tells Moses, go back and see what's become of your people. So then Moses goes back and he kind of takes leadership, and he's fighting a war against the Pharaoh for the freedom of everything, and freedom of his people, I should say. So then God kind of shows up and says, "You're taking too long." And he goes, and Moses says, "So after 400 years of slavery, you're just now becoming impatient?" And God goes, "Well, maybe it's time that you sit back. I don't really need you. Let me take it from here." And then it goes into all the plagues. And of course, throughout all of the plagues, there's this advisor to Ramses who's kind of explaining what's causing them. And it's like the scientific basis that we've now come to understand that may have been what caused it, if not an act of God. So he's kind of telling all those stories, and eventually Ramses gets tired of hearing the excuses because he's got a reason but not an answer. So he goes off from there. And then it just kind of like jumps periodically through the plagues until it gets to the last one, which, if you don't know what it is, go read the Bible. It's in there, the whole thing. You'd be amazed how many stories you already know from the Bible if you actually start reading it. Seriously, check it out. Okay, sorry about that. Backup battery died as well, so if you notice, I'm in a different location. Had to drive home, charge up the batteries. Then I was going back out to the store, so I figure, what the hell, I'll try and finish this review. The battery's probably going to die on me again, but I'll try and get through it. So, anyway, where was I at? So they were doing the plagues. Moses was sort of against the plagues. Like, at first, he was okay with them, and then, like, as they progressed, he kind of got awkward with the godchild about it. Like, this is a little bit out of hand now. It goes into the Passover thing, and then it kind of wraps up that end. So then Ramses lets the people go, and, like, throughout this whole thing, it's kind of been portraying Ramses as this wimpy character, which, the Bible depicts him as being more than that. He gives in, but he's more, like, he's more willing to fight Moses on things and not just give up. And in this, he's just kind of whimpering the whole time. Like, I'm the king. You're supposed to listen to me. Why isn't anyone listening to me? Kind of like a whiny crybaby type of thing, but still trying to be authoritative about it, which doesn't really work that well. So then he lets the people go. Then Ramses decides that, he's changed his mind, and then the one guard's like, well, it's going to take a lot more than the troops that you have to recapture 400,000 escaped slaves. And he goes, we're not recapturing anyone. So obviously he's going just to have a war and kill everyone. So then there's that. Then there's the parting of the Red Sea, which wasn't depicted as well as mythical as it was in, like, the Ten Commandments. The whole thing's kind of taking the mythicalness out of what the story was about, but yet at the same time still trying to have the mythical aspect with God being the one behind everything. But at the same time, it's like, oh, well, let's explain to you how everything could have been done to where it wasn't actually God. It could have just been Moses hallucinating, which, if you actually watch the movie, you'll understand that too. Because at one point he gets hit on the head, and that's the first time that in a landslide, and that's the first time he sees the godchild, so everyone thinks he's kind of hallucinating now, and that's where all this is coming from, and that, everything's just kind of stuff that he's seen over time that knows is going to happen. So then they manage to get away from Pharaoh and his troops, and they're sitting on the banks of the other side of the Red Sea, and Moses is talking to this other guy, and he's kind of doubting the tribe. He's like, we're all united now because we have one purpose, but once this purpose is over, what's going to happen? Obviously we're going to fraction off into different tribes, and there could be other wars, and it could be more slavery, and it could be just a big mess. So then it goes to Moses climbing back up the mountain, writing the 10 Commandments, coming back down. Then again, it jumps forward to when he's a lot older, riding in a wagon, and behind him is the Ark of the Covenant, which didn't really look like the Ark. It was just a box, but it had the 10 Commandments in it, so obviously that's what it was. And that's basically the end of the movie. It kind of ends right there. It doesn't really tell you where it goes from there. So yeah, overall, the whole movie just kind of takes a really long time to do small things, and then the things that they should focus more on, it jumps through them really quickly in like a montage type of thing. And it's like, I would have rather seen that aspect of it, even though I already know that part of the story, than this other filler part of the story that could have been summed up in like 2 minutes. You don't have to spend 15 minutes of the movie on it. So yeah, overall, the movie was it got really boring. Like, after the first 15 minutes of the movie being, drawing you in, like, okay, what's their take on it gonna be? And then it's just like boring. Oh, look, oh no, it's boring. So, on a scale, star rating, I don't want to rate it overly low because I see what they were going for. They just didn't execute it well. So I'm going to say it's about a 2. Maybe a 2. No, 2.5 is too high for it. I'm going to give it a 2. Yeah, just really not a whole lot else to say about it other than that. If you're interested in biblical movies, check it out. Usually I like biblical movies. This one just kind of missed the mark, and like I said, I was actually starting to fall asleep towards the end. So much so that I wasn't going to go see another movie after it, and I was just so exhausted by the end of that one. I was like, I'll go see the other one tomorrow. So there's another movie review coming up after this one. Just wait for it. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to wrap this up before my battery dies again. Hopefully I can make it through the wrap-up. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Movie Reviews.